بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا. وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا مات ابن آدم انقطع عمله إلا من ثلاث صدقة جارية أو علم ينفع به أو ولد صالح يدعو له. So my dear respected brothers, elders and sisters, wherever you may be watching this, first and foremost, before we start the program, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Although this is a bit of a question and answer session, before that I would like to set the tone and set the session for us, and specifically I want to talk about our interaction with our children, and more so how can we parent our children and look after our children in light of Sunnah and Hadith. So obviously before I go into the full topic, and the topic is so vast and extensive work has been done under this subject that I don't think I will be able to do its justice within the next half an hour to 45 minutes to an hour. But I will try to keep it succinct as much as I can. One of the key things I would like to point out right at this moment in time is that latest research indicates that approximately 42% in UK and 50% in United States of the couple who got married in 2019 and 2018 divorced at the end of the year. So last year and 2018, approximately 42% of the people got divorced, and 50% in America. That's roughly just under 106,000 people in United Kingdom. I would love to give you the statistics for our Muslim community specifically, but unfortunately no factual evidence as such exists in United Kingdom at this moment. A study was being done is being done under that, but due to the law and due to the social policy at this moment in time, that the religious background of people is not a necessity when applying for a divorce. So I want you to think for a moment under this statement. If you really think about it, 42% of the people are getting divorced. This is an old research, and it continues to be accentuated, and it continues to be worked, continues to be done on this, that children's instability or children's direct achievement in life, children's achievement in life and doing well in later life, it correlates instability of parental relationship. So i.e. the spouses, husband and wife, depending on the quality of that relationship, a child's outcome in the future will be determined by that. And that is a very, very powerful statement for us to think about for a while. Because if you think about it, when a child is witnessing, before a divorce takes place, or before a divorce or a breakup takes place, there is a number of sequences before that takes place in the first place. So the final outcome is divorce, but before that usually a relationship breakdown and arguments and fighting and so many things happen. Rarely a divorce takes place in amicable situation, or that one day everybody wakes up and that's it, tomorrow we are no longer going to be married to each other. That doesn't take place. So what that does, according to the statistics and research and finding, it damages a child, and that can have long lasting impact on a child. And remember, one day that child is going to be a parent, one day that child is going to have responsibilities, one day that child is going to have positions. And if their upbringing is not stable or according to a formula, then they will not be able to fulfill that obligation accordingly. So the question is how should we look after the children? What are some of the things that we need to do? And when does the looking after the child actually take place? When does the responsibility us as adults take place? If you remember one thing, and it's very critical to remember one thing, is that child is a result of a union between two spouses. So a union between a couple, husband and wife, and within the context of Islam, between husband and wife. And what happens as a result of the union, the outcome result of that is typically a child, boy or a girl. So we have to think about this for a moment. So this is addressing all the married couples and those who are not married and those who are thinking of getting married. We need to really think about the hadith and the Quran. Quranic ayat says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. O believers, protect yourself and your family from the hellfire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, protect yourself and protect your family from the hellfire. And similarly, Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is saying in the hadith that I mentioned earlier, right in the beginning, basically, when a person passes away, all his actions are cut off. All his actions stopped. All his good deeds or bad deeds stopped. Except on 3 occasions or on 3 things. One of them is sadaqah, good causes, water well, etc. after your death. As long as the project continues, you will be rewarded. Simple as that. Second one is, as long as people are taking benefit out of that knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to give you rewards for that. And the last one, the most important one is waladin salihin, neck child, pious child, a good child, a righteous child. When that righteous child makes dua for you, that is also a zakhira for us, that is also a savings for us, that is also a passive thawab for us. We are not doing anything, but these 3 things continues to give us good deeds. We no longer can carry out bad deeds. So if the child, if your son or daughter continues to pray Surah Yasin in the morning, pray Durood, Salawat and Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam regularly, does Hajj for you, does Umrah for you, does all the good action for you, does Sadaqah for you, what happens? Our good deeds balance keeps increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing. So clearly from this hadith and from the Quran, a very big lesson itself can be taken from this. And that is that a union between 2 human beings is one of the most important things. That also states our union between the man and the woman is not just for sexual gratification, physical gratification, carnal desire fulfillment. Rather, it's one of spirituality. Rather, it's a social contract between 2 people. Rather, it's a communication, cooperative. It's a relationship-based union. What happens, unfortunately, we think we have married someone. When we have married someone, we own them and we can do whatever we like because I'm the most powerful, I'm the macho person, etc., etc. I'm sure you're not like that. And that is we feel that we are owed. The lady is under obligation. The woman, the wife is under obligation to serve us. It's not a 2-way relationship where we negotiate between each other. We negotiate our roles and responsibilities. We feel, yes, Quran and Hadith and Sunnah has given us certain rights and rules and regulations, but we also try to be dominant. That's not how it goes. Basically, according to the fuqahas, when a person gets married, what happens? You need to look into certain qualities. And there's leeways and so forth and so forth. And it's very important to pay attention to this because we unfortunately don't pay much heed. Then later on life, what happens? There's value clash. Later on life, what happens is the husband or the wife wants one thing, the wife wants another thing, be it according to deen, be it religion, be it dunya, be it a business, be it career, be it whatever it may be. Family style, going to meet the in-laws, everything. There's a massive, major clash. Why? Because there is no compatibility between the 2 persons. There is no compatibility. One person might think the person, my son or daughter becoming Hafiz is the greatest thing. Becoming Hafiz Ani, even better. In fact, the partner might think, actually, no, I don't want my son and daughter to become Hafiz. Rather, I want that person to become doctor or engineer. These are some of the things, the arguments take place. And usually what it does, when arguments does take place between the spouses, and I'm sure all those married couples will acknowledge this, begrudgingly or openly, that arguments usually take place over small little things. That is the most craziest thing a lot of people say to me. Arguments usually take place over small things. And then it leads to big, and you're not talking to each other for weeks and weeks and months, and so many things happen, and silent treatment takes place, and the child is experiencing and witnessing all this. And that is very detrimental, very dangerous to a child's welfare going forward. Research has stated, and factual evidence have been garnered and gathered and ascertained, that parental relationship instability is a direct result. These are the direct results in a child developing risky behavior, child developing mental health issues, depression, delayed developmental issues. And what happens when arguments take place between the spouses? They usually end up taking the anger out on something else, and that something else tends to be children. Without us realizing, without you and I realizing, what do? We can't take it out on the dominant person, either the wife or the husband. The other party takes out on the less dominant person, i.e. the minor child. Then the minor child, what happens? He sees that, she sees that during the early stages of life, and he takes it and takes it and takes it, then explodes during the teen years, 13, 14, and then what happens? Mom and dad are complaining, my son's got jadoo, my son's got jinn, my son's got this, my daughter's got this, I don't know what to do. They run towards the Maulvi Sahib, do something, please do some du'as and things like that, my son's got something. Extraterrestrial beings taking place. Forgetting that during the early stages, we forgot our fundamental rights, fundamental responsibilities towards the children. And that is, the child needs to feel secure. That is, the child needs to have a good name. That is, the child needs our loving and caring and protection and our attention. When the child is in need of something, we have to be there for that child. When the child can't do something, or you're not allowed to do, it is incumbent, it is necessary for us to explain to that child why that child cannot do something. Because remember, child is only looking at his or her world with his eyes. He or she hasn't seen the entirety of the world. For them, it could be just playing with the dolls. For them, it could be just playing with the car. For them, it's just playing with the books, reading the book. That is their world. They don't know the responsibility of providing for someone. They don't know the value of money. They don't know the value of relationship. All they see is how you react with each other, with your husband, with your wife, with your in-laws, with your brother-in-law, with your sister-in-law, and the family surrounding you and the neighbors surrounding you. So, without delving into this, like I said, this topic is so deep, and I cannot give it justice enough talking about it, but I'll try my best. So, between the two people is probably the most important first step towards looking after a child. Because you cannot have a child legally, Islamically, unless you're married. Once you're married, that child can then you can look after them, have a child. So, Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that whenever you, according to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when you want to marry, there's 4 qualities that you should look into: the wealth, the beauty, etc. But the deen should be prioritized. Deen should be prioritized. Piety, religion should be prioritized. This statement is so strong and is such that, according to fiqh books, that they call it the kufr, the compatibility. If the compatibility is not there, the wali, the legal guardian of the girl, can object to that marriage. That's how important the compatibility is. Why? Because all those people, and I'm addressing directly at you again, all those people who are married, if you think about it, the honeymoon period usually lasts a certain amount of time. 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it eternal long life. But typically lasts for 3 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, 1 year. Then afterwards what happens? We have to deal with each other's deficiencies. We have to deal with this. We have to deal with each other's habits. And we are embedded, our lifestyle is embedded with habits, because typically we get married at the age of 20, 21, 18, 17, 22, 25. What about all these 25 years of habits? You cannot give up in one day. You cannot give up in marriage within two months. You cannot. And unfortunately, many of such couples, they are divorced within 7 days, within two nights. It has happened. Many stories are like that. Within 48 hours, the divorce happens. So, what happens is, if your characteristics, if your behavior, if your purpose, if your maqsad, if your outlook of life is not aligned with each other, then you have problems. Then I have problems, you have problems, we all have problems. Why? Sooner or later, it's going to lead to massive arguments. It's going to lead to disagreements and so forth and so forth. But if your values are aligned, if you are working together, you have same understanding that everything that I do, I'm doing for the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything that I do, I'm doing it to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Everybody say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Everything that I'm doing, this marriage is an ibadah. This marriage is a worship. I'm doing this to propagate the ummah of Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to expand the ummah of Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Marriage becomes worship. Every challenges you go, it becomes worship. Every act that you do within the marriage, it becomes worship. You're no longer looking at each other as the carnal desire fulfillment. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed that. But that's not the only purpose. Majority of us, not majority of us, I mean this is a quite strong word to use, our society is so corrupt at this moment, or our media has such an influence over us, and we have something called smartphone. Children are getting education about marriage and physical relationship between the spouses from wrong avenues. From wrong avenues. So what happens? They try to enact that within the relationship. They forget the main purpose of what relationship between two persons is, and that is spirituality, moral relationship. To produce a baby, that baby who's going to be qurratul ayn for you, that baby who's going to be safeguard you from the fire of hell, that baby who's going to be a passive income for the rest of your life, as long as you're in the grave and as long as the child is alive. That baby who's going to salvate you, give you salvation from the hellfire, from the azab al-qabr. We forget all that, but we can only align all this if we do the tarjih of the deen and the religion when people are getting married. And those people who are already married and going through a lot of marital problems, what happens is we also need to align our thinking that everything that we do for the child, it is for the sole pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and doing it and undertaking the parenting role as a Muslim according to the Sunnah and according to the Hadith. So, what are some of the things that we can do? So obviously, according to some strong research, has indicated our engagement with the child should start at the very, very early stages. Even when the child is in the womb, the relationship with that child should start at that moment. Why? The environment has to be right. It has to be one of tranquil. It has to be one of sukoon. It has to be one of Islamic environment. You can literally shape that child's future at that stage. There's so many stories that I can share with you. Famous stories. There's famous stories. There should be communication with that child. Whatever the mother feels at that stage, the child retains that information into that. Why does the baby cry when the baby comes out? Why do we go into a fetal position? Because it's a position of safety net for us. When we are in distress, we tend to go into fetal position because it's the most safest place for us in that position. We have been safe like that for 9 months inside our mother's womb. If we, as a husband, we are not fulfilling our responsibilities, rather ordering the wife around, rather making the wife feel uncomfortable, rather mistreating the wife, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala safeguard us, we are swearing at her, hitting her, using domestic violence and so forth. Allah ma'azallah. If you don't love your wife, I can understand that from a feelings perspective, but do you love your child? If you love your child, you automatically love the mother of the child. If you want to safeguard that beautiful amana, that gift, that trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you cannot neglect the right of your wife. That child already forming experience, Then when the child comes into the world, the first 2 years of that life is critical. Everything around him, he or she will pick up. Because remember, according to the hadith, the child is born innocent. Then it's the environment, the parents, the primary caregiver, adult sister, the parents, obviously parents, they are the heaviest significant influences of that child's life. The first 2 years, according to psychologists and social psychologists and behaviorists, they will tell you a child's future can be determined just looking at how closely related is that child to the parents, the primary caregiver. If the attachment, the relationship is not one secure, rather dysfunctional, what does that mean? When the child is crying, you're not in tune with the child's cry. When the child is feeling hot and warm, you're not there, you're unavailable. Child's future will be determined at that stage. If you talk to a behaviorist, they will tell you. Hadith says child is born innocent. It's the environment that shapes the person, whether he becomes a Jew, whether he becomes a Christian, in our case, whether he becomes a Muslim. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala safeguard us that because of our behavior, that our next generation are not becoming Muslims. We live in a very dangerous era. We live in a very, very, very dangerous era where certain policies are dictating the future development of the child. Some are contrary to Islamic beliefs. So we have to be extremely careful. Our attachment, our relationship with that child has to be critical. What are we doing? The child, as I said before in my bayans, in my talk last week, and on all the videos that I've been sending out, children cannot express their inner emotions very well. They cannot articulate what's feeling inside them. But they are very good. They feel more. They cannot tell you what they're feeling, but they feel it. We as adults, we don't typically feel it, but we are very good at articulating, including adding some false information, depending on the situation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guard us from lying. So what happens? The child will definitely feel that you're not available. So we have to be very careful how, when we are arguing, every relationship will have its ups and downs. Every relationship will have its disagreements. We have to have safe words. Look, if the spouses are angry and angry with each other, do you have a relationship box? Do you have a box where you could share your feelings with? When the husband or the wife comes through the door, first thing they do is they check the box to see how the person is feeling. Do you have a mechanism like that? Or a text message or your WhatsApp message? We live in a technology era. When the child comes, first thing when the child reaches out to grab you, are you too busy then watching the phone? Are you too busy watching a football match? Are you too busy catching up a series from last week? Or are you too busy on the phone to your friends and mates? And the child is there lifting their hand up, and what happens? They feel rejected. They feel neglected. They feel abandoned. They feel let down. Then that builds a massive image in their head. Adults are not to be trusted. Adults are not to be liked. Adults are no good. Adults are not very good for us. Then it becomes a defensive relationship between the child and the adults. Then you wonder after 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, when I call my son, he doesn't listen to me. The only way he listens to me when I scream really hard, really loud. And I have to use profanities now, Zubillah. I have to shout at him, swear at him, beat him up, give him hitting. And before you know it, full-blown domestic violence, full-blown anti-Islamic environment. What happens? You lost it. When the child reaches 13, do not be surprised if the child is swearing at you. Do not be surprised if the child is challenging you. Do not be surprised if the child is displaying many different behaviors. That's the sad reality of life. It's something that I've been dealing with since 2004. And I could go on this on hours and hours and hours and hours. But the point is our behavior, our actions. Okay, I haven't even covered half the points. I'm still on point number 1. And there's 5 points that I need to go through. So shall I stop?
No, continue.
Are you sure?
You got some questions.
Okay, inshallah, I will answer. So, guys, if you look into the statistics, our society on a daily basis is getting more challenging and more challenging and more challenging. COVID-19 is making it more challenging. Being at home 24 hours is making it also challenging. But at the same point, I am getting excellent reports from my fellow friends, my fellow colleagues, people I speak to, that COVID-19 has been one of the best blessings ever in their life. Why? Typically, they're so busy working and spending time with their friends, and the life is fast forward. Suddenly, they're stuck at home. Initially, it was very difficult. Now, together, what are they doing? They're doing everything together. Relation between the spouses are getting excellent. Relation between the child and the son is getting excellent. Relation between mother and daughter, father and daughter are getting really good. You are spending the time because you are realigning your thought process. That what am I doing? One day I am going to die. One day I'm going to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One day I will be held responsible for my actions. And I have to answer for my actions. And I cannot move from my spot until I have answered them satisfactorily and not lying. In this world, I can lie. I could get away with it. Nobody will know. But that day, I cannot lie. Why? Because my body parts will talk on my behalf. For me or against me. So what happens is, so I was saying, the more go 50%. Can you think 50% of marriages break down? I couldn't give you, unfortunately, about the Muslim population, but statistically speaking, past 10 years or 15 years, marriage breakup has increased. Because our future of the child, the today is child, tomorrow is the leader. That is the first thing we have to have. One day we were a child. I was a child. I still remember at the age of 7, I was running around, roaming the world free, know what is in life. But today I have a position of responsibility. Today you have a position of responsibility. We all have a responsibility towards our next generation. But the thing is, we have to be extremely mindful of how we engage with the child. And on talking of engagement, I'll go into that a bit more. I've got about 4 more points that I need to cover in. But before that, let me take some questions, please, not answers. Brother, sorry. And there was a question that came on Wednesday and I wasn't able to understand. It was a hard love. Let me answer that. I really didn't understand that question, to be honest, what the viewer or the listener wanted to say by that. Then I thought about that. Hard love. I think hard love here, if we are talking about our parents being quite strict with us, I think that's what the viewer wanted. Parents are being strict with us. Actually, if you think about it, our parenting with a child is environmentally led. It's the way we have grown up ourselves. And I've noticed that there's no, I've not done any research on that. It's more so empirical evidence, meaning my own lived experience past 17 years or 16 years is that our Indo-Pak Asian community, those who have grown up in India, Asia, Bangladesh, they typically tend to be a bit more, typically, not exactly the truth. They tend to be a bit more macho, and they struggle sometimes to show their emotions. But that doesn't mean they don't love their child. It doesn't mean that at all. It's just that their way of showing the love is not through articulating through words and so forth. It's more so towards their actions. And what happens is the child who's on the receiving end, my father hates me, my father doesn't want good for me. In fact, the father is so busy protecting that child because the society is so corrupt. The society is so messed up. There's so many bad things happening. And in his or her life, they might have experienced some trauma in their life, or they may have experienced something else. And one of the most important thing to remember, the way we have been brought up, if our experience have not been very positive, we tend to do everything completely opposite way of how we were brought up. So if I had a lot of freedom as a child, I will try to give less freedom to my child. If I had less freedom as a child, I will give more freedom to my child. If I had a lot of money as a child, I will give less money to my child. So everything's opposite. So what happens is, typically, if you look into the immigration statistics, our community from abroad came here because of poverty. Because of poverty and so forth and so forth. That automatically states that living standards wasn't great. There was a lot of struggle. There was automatically a lot of struggle. So if there was struggle, they had to live in a hard way. And this is the only way they know how to survive and thrive. And this is how they feel the child should be, and the child shouldn't go through that. And what happened? They end up mollycoddling that person, or overprotectiveness. And that is usually misinterpreted. But what we should be really basing our feelings on is what does the Sunnah and Hadith say? What is the rights of the parents on a child, or what kind of thing they should do for a child? They should provide a child with good education. They should provide a child with a good name. They should protect that child from harm. They should give him a very good Islamic education. The best form of education, Islamic education, which is the Hadith and Quran, Hafiz and Quran and Alim, and or any other religion that leads towards a good profession and leads towards recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the basic rights a parent should do for the children. If that has been fulfilled, I can't see why there should be something called hard love. So we have to ask ourselves is, have my father, have my mother given me my pocket money? Have they provided me with a good education? Have they given me clothes? Have they given me right direction in life? If that answers, then we need to think why we are feeling like that. So we need to look into our own feelings and we need to interpret that person's action. Because sometimes I could say, I love you dearly, but behind I'm love you dearly, I'm too busy doing something else. That's fake. So I hope that satisfies the listener's query.
Can I ask one more question? And you can
Yeah.
Is a parent's success measured by the quality of the relationship with that child, or by how effectively they can control that child?
Subhanallah, that's amazing. Does the quality of the child's
Parent success.
does the parent's success? Let me repeat after you so I could answer that.
Okay. Is a parent's success measured
Is the parent's success measured
by the quality of their relationship
by the quality of the relationship, yeah,
with that child,
with that child?
or by how effectively they can control that child?
Subhanallah, or how effectively they can control the child. MashaAllah, it's a Subhanallah. First and foremost, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give khair in you asking that question. That's the most important thing. It's success is something that we need to measure by basing our we need to have the baseline is our baseline of success, because ultimately, remember, you, I, everybody around us, we will die one day. Simple as that. If you're basing success under how quality the A levels and the degree, if they have got a degree or not, if that was the end goal, you've been successful. But if your end goal is that person needs to get a PhD, then you have failed. If the end goal is that person needs to, by the age of 30, needs to earn £40,000 a year, and they're earning £42,000 a year, clearly you succeeded. But if they're not and they're earning £20,000 a year, clearly you have failed. But ultimately, what is our success? Our success is leading our life in this dunya, understanding this life is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are being tested in every angle, tested through our children, tested through our spouses, tested through money, financial difficulties, illnesses, all types of tests. Because ultimate success for us is entering Jannah. So, hadith, and how much of that is aligned with the Quran. If we are not aligned with the Quran and Sunnah, doesn't matter whether you have an excellent relationship. You could be mother and a son and one of the most fantastic thieves in the world. Are you successful? You're not. Similarly, you could have a brilliant behavior management strategy in the house, but you don't pray salah. Clearly, you're not successful. It's that simple. So our measurement of success should be how much of my child is following the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How much am I following the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because when the child is born innocent, second thing is the child becomes typically like the person of his parents. You are the strongest role model in that person's child. So child's outcome is based on how you are. So to answer your question in simplest term, yes, your success matters in significant amount of time, but that success has to be aligned according to Sunnah and Hadith. Then the child is successful, and so will you be.
One more question and you can finish your...
Sure.
What is the age when a parent should start teaching their children about religious beliefs? And when should they start learning the Quran? And how should that be taught?
Subhanallah, such a vast question. So let me repeat after you.
What is the age when a parent should start teaching
What is the age when a parent should start teaching?
about religious beliefs?
About religious beliefs, yeah?
And also, when should they start learning the
And
Quran?
when should they start learning the Quran?
And how should it be taught?
How should that be taught? Subhanallah. Fantastic. One of the most amazing questions, to be honest with you. I say the education starts the moment you become pregnant. Simple as that. The moment the mother becomes pregnant with a child, education starts there and there, straight away. What do I mean by that? As I said right in the beginning, our behavior and our actions are all been recorded. The child experienced that, lives through the experience of the mother. Simple as that. So if at that time the mother and the father are too busy stealing, fighting, arguing, and listening to bad things, watching bad things, the child naturally experiences that. Every emotion the mother goes through, the child goes through that as well. Simple as that. So the learning starts from the beginning, cradle to grave. So right from the birth, right from the conception all the way to that person dies. The question about Quran, again, I'm teaching my children from very early age about Quran and basic stuff, qaida, alphabets, very early age stages. If I can't be there, my wife is teaching the child. So learning is, you cannot give definitive answer, because the best form of education the child can get is by watching the parents. Whatever you do, if you're praying salah, the child will copy you. If you're busy dancing to Bollywood tunes and Hollywood tunes and Bhangra music and what else, hip hop music, the child will naturally copy you. It's that simple. Five, they learn by memorizing. They don't learn by looking. Why? Because you are making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect that child and to give you barakah in that child. The learning starts from that moment. I would say is get them to recognize the letters initially, memorize the basic du'as, Durood Sharif, kalamas, and so forth. I have a series running every Saturday, but that's not for child, this is a bit for older children. Get them to learn qaida from age of 4 or 5, basic. I don't know how the situation in Glasgow, I'm still learning. There are a lot of makatib, a lot of masajids, there are madarises, there are a lot of private tutors around. Utilize them to make sure, please, that teachers are safe. They've been safeguarded, they have the safeguarding protocols in place. They're also well educated and well trained as well. Because not every adult, learned adult is an educator. Education is something different. Because safeguarding matters, so many things. Make sure they have the SSC badge. 100%. You're more than welcome to get in contact with our office. And that way, there's Mufti Nabil Chasab, who is the head of the education department. He will be more than happy to give you in-depth information, inshallah. But my personal opinion on education is under 7 should remain at home, learning at home education. But because at that age, they need a lot of nurturing, a lot of motherly instinct from the teacher. Because teacher, you see, they need a lot of cuddles, they need a lot of reassurances at that age. They don't have lateral thinking. So it needs a lot of nursery types of environment, a lot more so than 7-year-old upwards.
Do you want to finish your top points and then we come back to
Jazakallah. So let me remember what I was. Yes, importance of marriage and finding, having compatibility. That was the key. That's the key word. Compatibility between spouses is so important. I cannot overemphasize. There's no such thing as overemphasis on this. But compatibility per se is not what we normally think about. I like to sleep at 12 o'clock. Does my husband or wife, what time does he like to sleep? No. Compatibility in matters of deen. Because ultimately, it's sunnah. One of the biggest sunnah of Prophet ﷺ is to get married. And the purpose of marriage, we need to say what's our purpose. Our purpose of marriage is to increase the Muslim population, safeguard ourselves from haram, safeguard us away from the many bad things that's taking place out there in the world, etc. So what that does, your entire life, 24 hours 7, will be a form of da'wah. You will be rewarded continuously. Because, you see, marriage in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ وَجَعَلَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا لِيَسْكُنَ إِلَيْهَا. He is who created you from single soul, and from that made him a spouse, that he might find comfort in her. So marriage is not just for carnal desire fulfillment. It's not like that. It's more so about emotional comfort, physical comfort, all sort of type of comfort. And because in another place in the Quran it says, they are like garments. You are garments unto each other. So it's not about, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it's our bedtime duty. I hope there's no children watching this or listening to this. Our bedtime duty, and we fulfill our physical relationship, and that's it. We don't talk, we don't say hi and hello. No, nothing like that. Because our purpose is to have a child out of this, and that child is to be our future bank. That could be our zakhira for us. Sadaqah jariyah for us internally. We pray dua, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Our Lord, grant us from amongst our wives, there are parents out there who will see the child reaching 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. It's only last year before the drugs crime within the teenagers. These are they're fantastic, they're career minded, they're focused in life. But there are those who are not so. So really there are 5 principles, or I've summarized it in 5 principles that will help us in order to instill some influences on our children, and then inshallah one day they will turn out to be better for us. Remember, our responsibility is to work and do the effort on that child. Everything else is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He gives hidayah to the person whom He wishes, and He takes away from the right path whom He wishes. So we cannot call ourselves failure. How we can measure our success or failure is whether we have fulfilled our obligation as parents. That is the 100% or $64 million question. Have we fulfilled our obligation according to the Sunnah, according to the Quran? So first thing first, as I said to you, the environment has to be good. We have to be the role models. We have to show it to the child. We can't expect the child to understand us. We have to show it to the child. Everything that we do. I haven't experienced much neglect and abuse and abandonment in Scotland, but where I come from in England, subhanallah, I was dealing with abandonment, abuse and neglect on a daily basis. The father is, he didn't find his food in front of him, he shouted at his wife, then he took it out on all his children. When the father is coming to the house, everybody on eggshell, literally on eggshell. What's going to happen next? That is not a healthy environment. 5,500 people are right now in care system in the United Kingdom. Why? Because of abandonment, because of abuse, because of neglect. Abuse and neglect has lots of schools are underdeveloped. There you are setting them up renowned for his kindness, even to his enemies, The famous story, the Bedouin came to Medina Munawwara, and what happened? He saw Prophet ﷺ kissing a boy, and he said, do you kiss the boy? We don't kiss the boy. And what did Prophet ﷺ say to the nearest meaning? He said, I can't help it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken love from your heart. أو كما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So our dealing with children should be with rahmah, with mercy, with kindness and understanding and patience. How can you expect a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old to explain to the Pythagoras theorem? You cannot expect that, over expectation. You cannot expect a 6-year-old child to pray full Farad Salah every day at so and so time. If the child is messing around, talking and playing and doing something, let's get on the floor together with the child. Let's understand the child through their world, through their understanding, through their zone, I call it, into the world. Let's enter the world into their zone. What is the world? What is the world of an ant? It's the immediate surrounding. What's the world of a pigeon inside a cage? It's the cage. So what is the world of the child? It's the immediate surrounding. If you look into the Prophet ﷺ incidents with his grandson, I think it was Hussein radiallahu ta'ala and Hassan radiallahu ta'ala, I'm not 100% sure, but what happened once was, it's narrated by what happened once was, Prophet ﷺ came out to lead a nighttime prayer. So when he went to sajda, he stayed so long that one of the Sahabas actually raised his head to see what's going on, because he was concerned, or the Sahabas were concerned that something happened to Prophet ﷺ. Then he realized, then he saw one of his grandson was on the back of Prophet ﷺ. Immediately he went back to sajda. So at the end of the sajda, they asked Prophet ﷺ, why, how come you took so long? And Prophet ﷺ, what did he say? This is Prophet ﷺ understand. Prophet ﷺ took his time. If you think Prophet ﷺ was entering into the world of the child, and he was saying, you know what, I understand you, I'm with you, do what you need to do. It is a very powerful lesson for us adults. He made the child feel the adults are good people. He made the child feel that these adults are not going to destroy you and hurt you. But what happens today? We say don't talk to the stranger, which is good, we should say that, mashallah. But at the same time, you're also giving a very powerful message. The adults around, immediate surrounding outside is very dangerous. Constant fear of adults. But remember, that needs to be done. I need to make it very clear. There has to be a balance, fine balance. Yes, definitely there are very many bad adults out there. But the point that I'm trying to make is, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was even willing to delay 5 minutes, even delay the faraid salah. That is the point that I'm trying to make for the safety of that child, to make that child feel comfortable. How many of us are willing to exercise that much patience? Get away from me, I'm too busy. I'm so tired, I don't have the time with you. But before I go to the question, first and foremost, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of us the ability to understand our child's journey, to understand the child's world, to understand the needs of the child. Otherwise, if we are not there available for them today, they will not be available there for us tomorrow when we need them. And the cycle is going to change. I'm going to come back to my points.
How do I find a balance between being too strict and being too passive in regards to Islamic education for my children?
Subhanallah. It's a very, very vast question. How do I find a balance between being too passive and too strict in Islamic education? Again, it's a massive question, because you need to ask yourself, does that child have enough knowledge to lead their 24 hours lifestyle according to Sunnah and Hadith? Does he or she know what's right? Does he or she know what's not right? Will he or she be able to lead the 24 hours lifestyle, praying 5 days salah, everything according to Sunnah and Hadith? If they haven't done so, because before age of 7, we need to quietly and we need to encourage the child. By age of 7, we need to be quite forthright with them. And then by baligh, they are considered as young adults and they are responsible for their own actions in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have we prepared that? That's my point number 5. Independency, independent skills, giving them child a responsibility, and how we go about doing that. I hope that satisfied the listener's query.
We've got quite a lot of questions. This is the last one for tonight.
Okay, fine. Sorry to everybody, I've taken too long. This is too long, and it's, in fact, I could talk about this for next 2-3 weeks.
Your choice. So, what is the most effective way to handle teenagers who misbehave?
Subhanallah. Teenagers, you see, that comes down to parenting style. The parenting style that comes in. What is the most effective way to handle a teenager? Subhanallah, first and foremost, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you khair in this question. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you barakah in your life, because these are something everyday issues. Typically, again, it's about our relationship with the child. We need to change our attitude of parenting. Initially, before teenagers, what happens with the children, we use directive languages. I need you to do X, Y, and Z. I need you to go and sit over there. I need you to go to the shop, or I need you to go to masjid. And there's usually a yes or a no. And if it's a no, then consequences, boom, come flying down. And there's all hellfire loose. Above that age, you cannot go through that. And that's something, the first thing, because they go through major changes, 4 changes, typically. Physiological changes. So the body has a transformation. Then what that does is typically they get them to explorative mode. It takes them into an explorative mode. So if they haven't got a good Islamic foundation, then they will definitely get into drugs, they will definitely get into alcohol, they will definitely get into interrelationship with other people, be it boys or be it girls. These are reality of facts. And then you will be held responsible for that in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's factual, it's something that we need to be mindful of. Second thing, or risky behavior such as drugs, etc., etc. Other thing that happens is emotional increasing. So they start thinking about, they start to give meaning to life. They try to give meaning to life. They think more. They want answers. Why does so and so happen? What is the meaning of life? Why am I in this world? Who are parents to me? That kind of thing. And there's 2 more. It's slipped out of my head. But major changes happens. Yeah. Third one. One of the ones is they no longer want to be. They no longer want to consider you as their parents. Yes, you are the parents, but they don't want to call you mom and dad. They want a friend in their life. They want a friend in their life. And that's where a delicate parenting needs to happen. You need to negotiate that terms with the child again. No longer direct words, I want you to do this. Let's do this together. What do you think? The terminologies, our behavior, actions, hand on the shoulders. I remember the 2 most important people in our life, our parents, our teachers. Our teachers and our parents. They are the most important people, because we are constantly spending time with them, and our attachment level throughout our life is being worked on. So I remember institutions where our teachers would put their hands over their shoulders, but during class they were very strict. It was pure formality. But as soon as you were outside, they were your friends. Simple as that. That concept of teacher-child relationship was gone. Because now it was a pure role model. So we used to venerate them, we used to respect them a lot. Why did we respect them a lot? We genuinely felt love from them. If you needed something, it was there. If you needed advice, it was there. Whatever we needed, it was there available for us. But we also had a lot of respect for them. We didn't dare look into their eyes because we felt that's BRW, disrespectful. But I'm not saying everybody that's the universal way. That's one of the ways. So again, what you need to do, you need to renegotiate your terms with your son. And I don't mean sitting down and say, you know what, what's your terms, what's my term? No, it's about subtleties. Say, son, mashallah. Because ultimately your child, your son, your daughter is, inshallah. Is finished? Okay. Subhanallah. Jazakallah to everybody who put forward questions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring khair and barakah to us, to you, to all of us. It's the month of Ramadan. We cannot forget the importance of changes. We need to make intention, firm intention, because whatever intention you make, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will duly reward us accordingly. That's the beauty of intention. That's the beauty of good. Every intention that we make will be sawab for us. As it being the month of Ramadan, it will be multiplied many times, inshaAllah. We should make a lot of tawbah and we ask Allah for help. And we should pray this dua again. رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. And with that, inshaAllah, I request Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept what has been said. And whatever good has been said is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever bad has been said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive all of us and bring khair in our life. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.